Tonight, man against nature, the fight against raging floodwaters in the Midwest, wiping out lifetimes of memories in home after home.
All you could do is cry.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, tainted tomatoes. More stores pull tomatoes from shelves as the government tries to find the source of a salmonella outbreak in 17 states. An air disaster in Africa, a Sudanese jetliner with more than 200 on board explodes in flames after landing in Khartoum. And stepping out with the Army's Golden Knights, how one young man beat the odds to make the elite team.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. We're beginning in the middle tonight, the middle of America, where floodwaters are running people out of their homes and ruining crops at a time when food prices are already soaring. The death toll from the weekend storms that touched off the floods is now up to 15. Throughout the Midwest, rivers are still rising, including the Mississippi, and more rain is coming tomorrow. Engineers are checking dams and levees for damage. Cynthia Bowers now in the fight against the floods.
Frantic sandbagging efforts continue today in the southwest Indiana towns of Elnora and Edwardsport, with the National Guard fighting to hold back the White River.
Look how fast that is coming up.
There was no time to sandbag in the south-central town of Columbus, where raging floodwaters swallowed up entire neighborhoods without warning. Former Marine Andy Rutan managed to shoot these pictures before getting himself and his neighbors to safety.
Virtually lost everything. 3 vehicles, my furniture. I don't have anything.
Oh, my God.
The floodwater surged 4 feet into May Hawkins' house. Now she's left to try and salvage old photographs and memories.
When you got home and you saw what was left,
Everywhere you looked, it was something ruined, nothing in place, everything turned upside down, and you don't even know where really to begin.
Folks living in the western Wisconsin town of Gays Mills, flooded twice in a year now, told reporter Susan Simon they know all about starting over.
The Kickapoo River burst its banks and is now flooding down Main Street, flooding more than 150 homes and businesses. Some here say this could be the death of this community as residents try to decide whether they have the stamina to build again or to leave for good.
The misery left after nearly a foot of rain fell. It's also being felt all across the Farm Belt. Sixth-generation Indiana farmer Bill Lentz showed us what's left of this year's corn crop. Not much.
On an average year, as you see, the corn should be about this tall right now. And you can see what's left of it, a stalk, and see this has been broke off.
He says he's lost 90% of the corn planted on this 300 acres. And when you magnify that times all the other corn now underwater across the Midwest and a planting season that was already way behind, it is no surprise corn prices surged to record highs today.
and given that rise in corn prices and with so many fields still looking like this, in a few weeks we could all be paying the price for the flooding in the Midwest with higher costs at the grocery store. Katie?
And Cynthia, I know where you are in Indiana, the waters are in fact receding a bit, but they're worried about what's to come in some other states.
Yeah, they certainly are, specifically north and eastern Iowa and southeastern Wisconsin, where rivers have yet to crest. And as unbelievable and as unforgiving as it sounds, you mentioned it, there is more rain on the horizon. So folks there will be watching, waiting, and worrying for a few more days yet, Katie.
Okay, Cynthia Bowers. Cynthia, thank you so much. Meanwhile, here in the east, a brutal heat wave is expected to break tomorrow. But today, heat advisories were up from the Carolinas to New England. Temperatures reached the high 90s in much of the region. In Virginia, the mercury hit 100 and kept on going. People were doing everything they could to keep cool on this dog day of spring, eating Italian ice and walking under umbrellas if they had to be out in the sun. A very different picture, though, in the Northwest. As much as a foot of snow in Washington's Cascade Mountains. State officials say it's the first time in 30 years they've had to use snow plows in June. Overseas tonight, an air disaster in Africa. A Sudan Airways jetliner burst into flames after landing in a thunderstorm in Khartoum. More than 200 people were on that plane, but in what can only be called a miracle, it appears nearly half may have survived. Mark Phillips now with the latest.
For much of this evening, one fact was as clear as the flames engulfing the airliner on the tarmac of Khartoum Airport, that the death toll was likely to be high. Emergency escape chutes could be seen through the flames, and a Sudanese Airways spokesman is being quoted locally saying more than 90 passengers escaped from the wreckage, many suffering from burns. Estimates of the death toll now range from several dozen to well over 100. The flight originated in Amman, Jordan, and stopped in Damascus, Syria, before heading for Khartoum. Most of the passengers were Africans, the airline says, with a few non-Sudanese nationals. Violent storms had moved through the Khartoum area today, but it's unclear if weather was a factor as the plane landed. Sudan Airways says the aircraft was a modern Airbus A310. It should have been able to cope with the conditions. One local official says an engine caught fire just after landing. Another version says the plane veered off the runway. Relatives of those on board have gathered at the airport, waiting for news of who survived this crash and who didn't. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
Back in this country, more supermarkets and restaurants pulled 3 varieties of red tomatoes from shelves and menus. Tomatoes are linked to an outbreak of salmonella in 17 states. It's made at least 167 people sick and put 23 people in the hospital. Officials are still trying to find the source of the bacteria. Today, they ruled out Florida, but not before the industry there took a big hit. Here's Kelly Kobiea.
At East Coast growers and packers near Tampa, Florida, there's a whole lot of tomato picking going on, but not much else.
Normally we probably have about 120 to 150 people employed in the packing house.
Where are they today?
That's a good question. They're waiting to get called to come back to work.
Florida's tomato packing plants are quiet, shipping trucks empty, and warehouses stocked with fruit that won't sell. 90% of the nation's fresh tomatoes come from Florida fields this time of year, a $1 billion industry on the verge of collapse because of yet another food scare.
How much do you think you've lost so far?
It's in the millions. I mean, it's in the millions for us alone.
Yet ground zero for the latest salmonella outbreak seems to be in the Southwest. More than half of those who've become ill are in New Mexico and Texas. Raul Rivera's family was celebrating good news about his fight against cancer at a party in Houston. The salsa made him sick.
I thought he'd be over in a few days, or I would have taken him to the hospital immediately, but he kept getting worse.
Doctors say that cancer killed the 67-year-old, but salmonella poisoning was a contributing factor in his death. Today, more grocery stores and restaurants pulled tomatoes from their shelves and menus. Several major chains are now on that list. At farmers markets, local growers are trying hard to convince shoppers their produce is safe. But many consumers are still afraid to buy.
I'll ask for salads, and I suspect it'll be without tomatoes.
And that's really part of the problem. Even though the FDA said today that Florida tomatoes are safe, growers are concerned that it'll take a while before Americans are comfortable to put any tomato back on the table again. Katie?
And Kelly, I know the timing of this scare could not be worse for Florida tomato growers. Are they worried that they may not survive this?
They are worried, and some may not survive it, Katie. They've already been dealing with high fuel and fertilizer prices, now this. And they're also frustrated that the FDA didn't move sooner to pinpoint this outbreak and to clear them.
All right, Kelly Kobiea. Kelly, thanks so much. We like to think the food we eat, the food we serve our families is safe, of course, but recently there's been one food scare after another. What's going on? Here's Nancy Cordes.
Each summer, it seems, a new garden vegetable becomes the source of widespread illness. In 2005, it was lettuce tainted with E. coli. In 2006, it was spinach tainted with E. coli. And then green onions. Now it's salmonella in tomatoes, the 13th case of its kind since 1990.
Did anything change after these big outbreaks?
Well, unfortunately, no.
J.D. Hansen with the Center for Food Safety says the FDA has shrunk to a shadow of its former self, conducting 50,000 produce inspections in 1972 and just 10,000 a year today.
Basically, there's been an attitude that this is not the role of government to make sure our food is safe.
Just this week, as it struggled to pinpoint the source of the salmonella outbreak, the FDA announced a major new request for funding. $275 million, which would allow the agency to hire 490 new staffers.
The number of outbreaks has essentially been flat. They haven't increased and they haven't decreased. So have we had an impact on the number of outbreaks? Not yet.
That's left consumers with complicated shopping decisions.
It scares me, unless I'll check things now, make sure where they've come from.
But trying to avoid products from certain parts of the world may not always do the trick, because a lot of the outbreaks, Katie, stem from produce grown right here at home.
And Nancy, as you mentioned, critics say the FDA needs more money so they can conduct proper inspections. What's the chance they'll get it?
Well, there's a good chance, because if there's one thing that Democrats and Republicans agree on Capitol Hill, it's that the FDA is broken. The question is, will that money be enough? The FDA's own advisory committee says that it needs $100 million more than it's asking for just to make a down payment on improving food safety.
All right, Nancy Cordes in Washington. Nancy, thank you. For more on the signs of salmonella and treatments, you can go to our partner in health coverage, webmd.com, and simply search food poisoning. Moving on now to presidential politics. The candidates sparred today over the economy and taxes. Here's tonight's CBS News Campaign 08 Notebook. John McCain promised to simplify the tax code and make it more fair, and he claimed Barack Obama's tax policy wouldn't be good for anyone.
Under Senator Obama's tax plan, Americans of every background would see their taxes rise. Seniors, parents, small business owners.
But in Missouri, Senator Obama insisted most Americans would be better off under his plan.
My tax plan will cut taxes for 95% of workers, because we need to put money back into the pockets of struggling middle-class families.
Meanwhile, Senate Republicans today blocked Democrats from slapping a tax on the windfall profits of oil companies. The Republicans said it would have done nothing to lower the price of gas, which tonight is a nationwide average $4.04 a gallon. The Energy Department predicted today gas prices will top out in August when they'll average $4.15 a gallon. There is much more CBS News ahead, including a remarkable Iraq War veteran still serving his country by jumping out of airplanes. But up next, a high-tech solution for keeping kids in school.